So basically it's encoding, right? We're encoding a song, and taking its signature into the contract. And at the time of where we are trying to detect, content identification of a sound recording, to say, is this a match? Is this new AI version, using the original melody of the source file? We're able to do that, and at the same time point to the rights holders in the smart contract.
Those were the words of Bruno Guez, the founder of a company called Revelator. And for the last 25 years, Bruno has been an influential force across the music industry. And with Revelator, he's bringing a range of much needed services to the table, from catalogue management and digital distribution to income tracking and rights management, all those areas that we don't think about when we're enjoying an artist's work. But what I found truly groundbreaking about Revelator is its focus on Web3 and NFTs, because these emerging technologies have the potential to redefine how we think about copyright and royalties across the music industry and beyond. But what are the challenges? What are the opportunities that lie ahead for Web3 and music NFTs? And how does Revelator aim to facilitate the industry's transition into these new exciting paradigms? And they're just a few reasons why I've invited Bruno on the podcast today to provide his valuable insights into all these questions and much more. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Israel, where Bruno is waiting to join us on today's edition of the Tech Talks Daily podcast. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Neil. My name is Bruno Guez. I'm the founder and CEO of Revelator, a B2B music tech company focused around digital transformation of the music industry.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. One of the things I was really excited about talking to you about today is exploring the future of licensing frameworks and the impact that technology is having on this area. So, given the non-existence of licensing frameworks tailored for things like Web3 and NFT marketplaces, I'd love to set the scene for our conversation today and just ask you, how do you envision the evolution of these legal constructs to suit a decentralized world?
It's a great question. If you think about it, technology change has always really been led by, consumer behavior. Whether we went from analog to digital and, from mobile adoption and broadband, a lot of services became, a necessity as a result of these technological change, to really support the consumer shift. And as such, music licensing has, always lived in a very, I guess you could say, human relational, level. You call someone, you send an email to someone, you request a license, you talk to people to get a song into a movie, into an ad, into a game. And it's very, very analog still. So when you think about what's happened over the last 5 years, let's say, with even 10 years at this point, with the onset of crypto and Bitcoin and Ethereum and smart contracts, and now there's a whole, play on music assets, whether you call them music NFTs or using NFTs as a foundational infrastructure for licensing of content. It's clear to me and to many others as well in the space that, in order to get a song into a metaverse or a blockchain game or AI, AR, VR type of, opportunities that will come over the next 5 to 10 years, there needs to be a new infrastructure in order to properly, license or micro license rights into these new distribution and monetization channels. And as such, there needs to be a new way of doing it, because the analog, licensing model doesn't really work well in context to microtransactions and digital assets. So I see, Web3 as kind of the next frontier, the next iteration of the internet. And, within context of that, there needs to, be a new framework for automatically licensing rights and attributing payments to songs that are going to be used in these types of projects.
And one of the things that attracted me to what you're doing here is your focus on providing interoperability between music IP, Web3, AI, VR, and gaming, which it sounds incredibly cool, but I would imagine incredibly challenging to pull off. So what are some of the key technological and, of course, regulatory hurdles that you foresee in creating this seamless ecosystem?
Sure. Starting with tokenizing songs into smart contracts and creating a licensing framework where you can declare the rights that are granted for the specific use. That's at the fundamental core of what we have built. And as such, today there's not a ton of VR games yet that are licensing music, but I believe that will happen, over the coming years. And AI and generative AI in music, is very, big topic for everyone right now. And part of the challenge is, how do we monetize the rights? How do we license my voice rights or my name and likeness to be used on a voice model? So we haven't yet seen a lot of precedents in terms of creating a standardized, licensing framework for AI, but I believe we will over the coming year. So it all starts with really tokenization, tokenizing the rights, tokenizing the song, and being able to have, a framework where the rights that are declared and that are embedded within the smart contract, are accessible on the blockchain, accessible to the users that are licensing those rights.
And in a world that is increasingly moving towards things like microtransactions, if anyone listening hearing about Revelator for the first time, can you tell me a little bit more about how you plan to solve the complexity involved in tracking and dispersing royalties, especially when tokenization comes into play? Because I think this will really bring the subject to life.
Absolutely. So, we've built a platform that is, well integrated into the, digital supply chain and royalties infrastructure. We provide services to B2B customers, record labels, music distributors around the world, artist management companies, and so on. We mostly focus today on the recorded music side. We do have plans on expanding into the publishing side, and I've been doing a lot of interesting work on the blockchain side of it to support, a better licensing of musical works in context to, to royalties and royalty payments. The platform today allows any of our customers to be able to, tokenize a song, basically turn a sound recording into a smart contract, which is an application that runs on a blockchain that's got rules of who is getting paid, basically. So anytime we receive royalties from streaming services, we make royalty payments to the smart contract, which splits the money automatically to the rights holders' wallets in this case. So the way we think about, interoperability and adoption is really around making the technology, invisible. Really, it's about building the right types of products that users can use to, fulfill their objectives and properly license content into new types of, games and projects, services that are using music without really knowing anything about blockchain at the end of the day. And I think that's really important to abstract the complexity of the technology to make a friendly, user experience on the application side. Otherwise, we're not going to see a lot of adoption. People are afraid. They associate blockchain to crypto and crypto to money and all the regulatory hurdles related to that. But the underlying technology, smart contract technology, is actually really interesting for automating, rights and royalty payments and bringing more efficiency to the market.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that technology almost needs to be invisible. The average internet user, they don't care what DNS servers are or TCP/IP or even electricity, come to think of it. So I do agree with you on that. And I think this year, 2023, is going to be remembered as the year when AI went mainstream too. But on this podcast, I always try to get people thinking differently. So today I'd love to explore AI in IP protection with you. So can you elaborate on how Revelator is leveraging AI for the safer detection and protection of intellectual property? And are there any ethical considerations in automating this aspect, for example?
Well, I think that's a great question. We've been looking at the different ways that we could encode, a fingerprint, if you wish, of the sound recording within the context of a smart contract in order for us to be able to detect the rights associated, with sound recording. So similar to Shazam technology or audio, content recognition technologies, there are quite interesting ways today to be able to do wavelet analysis and really deconstructing a song and being able to kind of create slices of the song and build an audio signature from each of those slices and reconstruct, if you wish, a melody from those individual parts. And that really kind of plays into the AI, neural network and wavelet analysis technology. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is create an audio signature, a hash of the audio file embedded within the smart contract. So when it's time to, so basically it's encoding, right? We're encoding a song, and taking its signature into the contract. And at the time of where we are trying to detect, content identification of a sound recording to say, is this a match? Is this new AI version, using the original melody of the source file? We're able to do that and at the same time point to the rights holders in the smart contract.
Before you came on the podcast today, I was reading about how Revelator is aiming to simplify royalty operations and ultimately enhance financial reporting too. But the question I've got to ask you is, how do you plan to scale these solutions to accommodate a growing number of artists and rights holders out there?
Sure. So we are focused on B2B. Today we're dealing with about 175 businesses around the world that accounts for about 250,000 artists. So we're going to continue to focus on, partnering with labels and distributors and really providing them with solutions from the, supply chain to, revenue and report processing and financial management and royalty, accounting and payment distribution. That's our core platform. So as we bring on more, partners, if you wish, more distributors and labels, that really helps us expand the scope of the platform to reach more artists.
And I think when we're talking about this area of the tech industry, there's always a lot of talk around, usually around how to simplify the complex technology and increase adoption. But I think the most important thing of this is the role of community, and the Web3 space has got, I would argue, the most passionate community out there across many different industries. And the essence of Web3 and NFT ultimately lies in the power it gives to that community. So how is Revelator planning to engage with the community to co-create value? And also, do you see any challenges in balancing corporate and community interests? Because I would imagine that could be quite a fine balance too.
It's a good question. I do believe that Web3 social will become, the new experience, for social media over the coming years. And transactions will be very much, consumer to consumer or creator to consumer. And instead of calling it direct to consumer, I think it's more of a C to C model where creators are able to engage directly with their fans and their consumers. And I think ultimately that's how the transactional, exchange of value will happen between fans and the artists that they love. With that, this will take a bit of time. I think we're seeing a lot of great progress in Web3 social, but it's still very niche and still very early in that cycle. I think what people want to get beyond is the middleman, the monopoly, on tech platforms, really owning data, providing that middleware between access to the audience and your content. And we'll start to see more and more shifts moving towards, hey, I want to own my data. I want to own my audience. I want to interact and connect with them directly without, having a Google, a Facebook, an Apple, et cetera, in the middle of that relationship. The same is true with DSPs and streaming platforms. People want to be able to reach their fan base without having to deal with, Apple Music or YouTube or Spotify in that case. So I do believe that wallets and, peer-to-peer technology becomes essential for developing this C2C model, this direct access between the creator and the consumer. And that will be a big part of what community looks like in the coming years. Still a lot of challenge, I think, around what that means and, what's the tooling, available to allow creators to build fan bases and market and monetize their audiences directly, in a decentralized way. But I think it's a very exciting field to be looking at.
It really is. And if we look back at this year, we're not talking about being blindsided by AI this year. I think boardrooms have also increasingly been talking about sustainable practices and ESG scores, etc. And just talking about that subject alone, there has been an ongoing debate about the environmental impact of blockchain technologies and how to improve that. So how is Revelator addressing sustainability while developing its blockchain-based services? Because it is becoming an increasingly important topic, isn't it?
I think it has been. I think it's a topic of the past. Most likely, I think you look at, new layer 2 solutions, whether it, you look at Polygon, which we've been developing on, and that's very cost efficient and fast and energy efficient. And, environmental issues are not really relevant, I think, to the Polygon ecosystem. And same with other ecosystems and layer 2s. So I think, maybe it's still a concern at the Bitcoin, mining level, but it's not so much of a concern for most consumers when it comes to working on layer 2 platforms.
In business, of course, there is that famous saying of you can't improve what you don't measure. So in terms of market adoption, what's your vision for the next 3 to 5 years regarding the adoption of Revelator's solutions? And is there any metrics that you can share that you're focusing on how you measure success and the kind of maybe roadblocks, hurdles, challenges that you're preparing to overcome in those years ahead too?
Sure. So I think, we look at success at really kind of building the infrastructure and starting to see more, royalties being paid, through these, new infrastructure and networks and payment networks, if you wish. So bringing, music royalties on the blockchain is something that's, part of our core mission. And we'll, measure success by understanding how much, we're increasing speed and efficiency and payments through smart contracts. So that's definitely one area where we, look to optimize. The other thing I think is interesting is, blockchain data, on-chain data will become important and more significant to businesses, because if they're starting to transact, whether it's tokenizing music NFTs or royalty payments or licenses, there needs to be more visualization, analytics, data coming back from those blockchain platforms, whether it's happening on Polygon, on Ethereum, on Optimism, etc. So investing in building really NFT analytics and blockchain-based data, dashboards is really important to being able to measure and monitor the activity around digital assets. So that is something we are currently developing so that we can provide the same level of transparency and ease of use that we do in the music analytics and the music data space, but also specifically to on-chain data.
Well, I love chatting with you today and all the great work that you're doing here. And there is more than enough doom and gloom cluttering up our news feeds without us adding to it today. So I'd love to restore the balance in the universe by leaving on a big high today when we're talking about this industry. So I've got to ask, what is it that excites you right now? And what makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning and gets you excited about the road ahead?
Sure. So I spent, 3 decades in the music industry. I've seen, the shift from analog to digital, from download to streaming. Now I'm seeing another shift from streaming to digital asset as kind of the next, infrastructure and the next wave of innovation around music IP. That excites me a lot. I wake up every day, thinking about how can I further, our efforts to make it easier to transact, easier to get paid, with transparency and more and faster, quite honestly. It's still a shame that in 2023, artists and songwriters still have to wait, 90 days, 120 days, sometimes up to 1 year to get paid for a radio broadcast. And, we're 20 years into the world of digital, and not a lot has changed for rights holders. So I think working towards improving the speed of payments, the transparency of payments, and the ease of use for these new technologies is what excites me.
It's a beautiful moment to end on. And if we do have a business leader listening, a Web3 enthusiast, an artist, or someone just curious wanting to learn more and learn more from your community, maybe join your community or find out more information about the great work that you're doing, where would you like to point everyone listening to find out more information?
I think Revelator.com is a good place to start.
Excellent. Well, I'll add a link to that to the show notes so people can find you nice and easy. We did cover a lot in a short amount of time today, from creating new revenue streams for right holders, providing interoperability between music IP, Web3, AR, VR and gaming applications, and solving the challenges of wallets, tokenization, monetization and payments. So many big things that you're going after there, all incredibly cool. I'd love to stay in touch with you, see how this path evolves for you in 2024. So there's an open invite for you to come back on here. But more than anything, just thank you for talking about all things Revelator, and let us have a look under the hood of what you're doing at Revelator. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Neil.
Wow, what an enlightening conversation that was. A huge thank you to Bruno for sharing his deep expertise and the revolutionary work he's doing with Revelator. And I think it's evident that the music industry is at the cusp of significant transformations. And they're going to be enabled by Web3, NFTs, and other emerging and advanced technologies. So from creating new revenue streams for right holders to developing a cutting-edge AI and blockchain technologies for IP protection, Revelator certainly seems to me that they're charting a bold course for the future. But as with any technological shift, there will be challenges. Regulatory frameworks are still evolving, and the industry needs to build an infrastructure that facilitate these new royalty rails. And as we discussed today, this is just the beginning, and I'm excited to see how Bruno and his team navigate these complexities to make the music businesses more efficient and equitable. But hey, this is just my thoughts having sat down with Bruno for 20 minutes and learning more about the work that he's doing. And I know, as we said in the interview today, one of the best things about Web3, about the NFT space, about blockchain and crypto is community. You've just got to spend a few minutes on crypto Twitter to learn how passionate the community is and how important they are to everything that we're talking about. And if you'd like to add anything to that conversation, maybe it's just a little comment, maybe you want to record an audio message, or maybe you want to come on the podcast and share a different side of the tale. Whatever it is, you're more than welcome. techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. Love to keep the conversation going with you all and learning more about all sides of what we're talking about. But that's it for today. So I'm Neil C. Hughes, your host, reminding you once again to stay curious and be open to the technological advancements that are reshaping our lives and businesses for the better. Don't believe everything you see on those doom-ridden news feeds that we all scroll through. But more than anything, thank you for listening. Hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. And until next time, don't be a stranger.